All right, dude.
Ooh.
So in the last, this is kind of like some academics here. Unclassified for sure, if I can share the screen correctly. So I thought we would talk about the MiG-31, and the reason specifically for this aircraft, and maybe we'll start talking about, we'll do like a little section on various quote unquote enemy fighters as we go, because last time we did, what video was that? It was the Su-35 versus the Viper. Somebody said all the Vipers are going to get shot down because the MiG-31's out there shooting hypersonic missiles and no can defend. It's the thing. So I was like, well, let me look at this, because the last time I had looked at a MiG-31, it was kind of a joke. Like, it wasn't something that I was real worried about as a fighter pilot, because it wasn't made for me. As a Viper guy, I'm like, okay, well, BVR, not a big deal. If I have to turn with it, really not a big deal. I'm not really scared. So I went and looked, and I just picked a random article and thought we can talk about just some of it. Have you ever fought one or experienced one at all?
No, sir.
All right. So it is a long-range, two-seat supersonic interceptor aircraft offered by the Russian Aircraft Corporation, previously MiG, for the Russian and Kazakhstan Air Forces. It started its life in 1975. It was a VFR and IFR day and night, capable with the first Soviet fighter to have true look-down, shoot-down capability. There's more than 500. They were in Syria. They developed it. It was unable to, the MiG-25 couldn't fly at low altitude, so they were like, hey, let's build this thing. The design is welded nickel steel, titanium, aluminum alloy, and 2% composites. It's kind of like a big girl. You know what I'm saying?
She can land in a field, no problem.
Yeah. Many variants. They've been used to train astronauts, conduct research. They have commercial satellite launch variants, upper atmosphere, space tourism, all kind of stuff. MiG-31E is an advanced version of the MiG-31. And then the E has a phased array radar. So that's pretty darn cool.
I think the MiG-31 was the first fighter to have an ESA.
Yeah, I think it's passive, PISA, passive electronically scanned versus active. So the MiG-31M, it upgraded with a number of CRTs and increased number of missiles. Still high-speed, multifunctional, long-range fighter aircraft, can destroy air and ground targets. It has a HOTAS now, which, if you know anything about Russian fighters, historically they do not. They're not very HOTAS or user-friendly.
Let's hide the switches in the cockpit.
Yeah. I mean, so it had an anti-satellite missile developed as part of the U.S. ASAT program. Large single missile beneath its fuselage. And then 2 MiG-31 Bravo Mikes entered in 2019. Multi-mode radar, HOTAS, controls, multifunction display. It's got a Wizzo. What does a Russian Wizzo do?
A Rizzo. No, just kidding.
All right, so this is where we get into kind of the meat and potatoes of this thing. Gonky, do you, when they translate, I always have trouble with this. When they translate the Vempel R-33, do you have to go Google it and be like,
oh, yeah.
Well, what is the NATO? Because all the DCS people, everybody's like, it's an R-33. I'm like, I have no idea what that is. Tell me that in NATO terms.
Dude, even the real stuff, like...
what?
They change it from this is what the Russians call it, this is what the Chinese call it, this. I'm like, dude.
Yeah. All right. So that's a semi-active radar homing missile used to take out the Bone, the B-52, and the SR-71. It has 4 short-range R-60 MK missiles and 2 Biznavat R-40 TD1 medium-range missiles, a 6-barrel 30 Mike internal cannon with 800 rounds. That's, dude, 800 rounds.
This is a big airplane, though, man. If she can carry the rounds.
Yeah. Okay. Well, 10,000 rounds a minute. It can accommodate the Adder. I know that one. AA-12. That's one we know.
Finally.
Saying a thing. And then the AS-17 Krypton anti-radiation missile. So the radar is the flash dance, operates from the rear cockpit by the Wizzo. It can scan 200 kilometers, is about 100 nautical miles ish. Don't check my math on that. But it's a fixed antenna that can be moved electronically. Electronic steering of the radar beam is much faster and accurate than mechanical steering. And it's got electronic countermeasures. It also has an ERST, which is pretty Russian standard. Track wall scan, ERST, RWR, all that stuff. Supersonic aircraft. And that's the big thing, is it can go low altitude, Mach 1.2, or fly high, fast, do good work. And so really what people keep bringing up is because this has been like the star of the Ukraine war, the R-37, aka the AA-13 Arrow. And if you look at it, it says right there, the AIM-54 Phoenix. It's hypersonic, dude. And which made me think, well, what's hypersonic mean? And I guess the technical definition is anything over Mach 5. So that's why it's bigger deal than like an AMRAAM or something like that, which is not quite that fast. But here's what I'll say. That's great, but you're not shooting down fighters at 100 miles with this thing. You just, unless they're unaware.
Yeah, so that
you don't have the energy.
Well, dude, so we used to make fun of the Tomcat guys, right?
Yeah.
Right. They're like, the time me shooting, whatever. It's like 100 miles. And we're like, dude, yeah, but if I maneuver more than 3 degrees, it's not going to hit. And he's like, you're missing the point, dude. We're targeting and shooting things like other targets that don't even know they're targeted yet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, valid.
Yeah. I mean, so it's designed to shoot down your AWACS and your tankers.
Yeah.
Your support assets that are back behind the enemy lines kind of deal. The Vipers aren't going to have a problem with this unless they're just totally unaware.
Well, dude, if you look at the MiG-31, it's actually, I don't know, my opinion, it's an excellent design for what it's designed for, right? It's designed to fly low and fast or really high and fast and shoot down large targets. And I mean, I can't speak for F-16, but MiG-31 up in the 50s doing Mach 2. I mean, you're not intercepting a MiG-31 and an F-18. I mean, it'd be like, hey, as he goes zooming by and like, I
can't get the turn. You got to start your turn at 25 miles because you might, if you take the picture at the right time. Yeah, the MiG-31, there he is. Now he's gone. So, like, it is that's an interceptor, right? So, I mean, now MiG-31, don't come down to the 20s and get in a turning fight with me because you're gonna lose big time, right?
So, and like you said, man, it was designed in the 70s.
It's the high fast flyer that you worry about, though. That's the thing. It's like he's putting a lot of energy on whatever he's shooting. Yeah. Because it's like an F-14. I mean,
yes,
we should have the F-14 back.
Tomcats.
I volunteer to fly the F-14 Echo. Right.
Well,
single seat variant.
Well, dude, listen, you need a Rio to hold the camera, right? I mean, the GoPro handles
with
great.
AI, dude. Not with AI and 360 cameras. I know. I can film my own merges now.
And I mentioned that. I think it's the last show. It's like pure fighter, pure attack, right? So this is what you get, right? So like, I'm like you. Like I read the MiG-31. I'm like, oh, this thing, it can't turn. It's got, it's too heavy, blah blah blah. But dude, if a MiG-31 pilot stays in his environment and executes interceptor tactics, it can be a pretty good airplane.
And I think that's how it applies to the current Ukraine conflict because, dude, they can sit back 100 miles in Russia and you can't. The Ukrainians don't have a whole, like they're limited to where they can go.
No.
And they don't have any support assets anyway. So, now you can be in Russian territory and reach out and touch our support assets, our AWACS, the guys who are just skirting borders and stuff, just not in the airspace, but they're close enough. That's where the threat is. It's not necessarily that you've got this, high maneuverability missile that no can defend.
Right.
That's for closer in. This is just for you're unaware. It's like the SA-5. You know, it's not, you're not going to get the big telephone pole that, you know, oh, well, it's not for you. But if you don't know about it, it could make you have a very bad day.
Well, if you read there's some really great stories about the Iranians using the Tomcat against the Iraqis. And that's exactly because the Tomcat had the big radar and the big stick, and, you know, they would hang back and and lay waste. But like you said, you gotta, I mean, it's a very specific tool,
right?
And you got to use it as such.
I mean, it's not ideally, and this is where I'm definitely don't want to get anything. Let's don't put this in jail. Ideally, you would have a maneuverable missile that can go long ranges that, you know, cannot be outmaneuvered like this. So this is the AIM-54 where you can outmaneuver it. Ideally, where I would be worried is if you had, you know, the AIM-120 ski that could do these kind of ranges, and, you know, in-game energy is still high.
Well, I wonder, okay, what if they shoot me at 50 miles? I mean, can it turn then?
I don't think it can. I mean, if you look at, I don't think it's not a turning missile.
No, it's made for big targets.
Yeah. It's not a turning missile. So that's why it's not, you know, because if they get inside that 50 miles or you know, now they're talking a different of their inventory.
Right.
But still something you worry about. I mean,
you
don't worry about it. You take it seriously. I guess that's the thing. You always take everything seriously and make sure that, you know, you're not.
You have to, man. I mean, like I said, the MiG-31, if the operator is crazy and comes down into the 20s and thinks he's going to get in a phone booth with an F-16 or an F-18, it ain't going to work. But you got to know, man's got to know his limitations.
I am surprised that they have upgraded this. You know, when I was reading about it, you know, I mean, it's
still being used.
But that's what they have to do. I mean, if people like this.
But they're saying that about the Eagle. They're like, I can't believe the Americans are still using the Eagle.
Yeah. Well, and that was my argument about the Viper. I don't think we should have stopped producing the Vipers, because I think you need the jack of all trades in large numbers as well as the specialist. You need the day one of the war jets, and you need the day 69 or 690 day war, day of the war jets.
Well, I would argue that the Hornet and the Viper, because they're basically they're designed for the same job, which is basically a light attack airplane with really good self-protect ability. That's really what they are. They're not really, they're not really interceptors, they're not really A-10s, right? But they can carry a bomb load in and successfly defend themselves if needed. And that
self-escort strike. Yeah.
Self-escort
strike.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool.
Nice to have real fighters though, and real A-10s, right? That's why the Eagle and the A-10 are still here.
For now.
But dude, they're both from before we were born. I mean, the early 70s, man.
Everything is before even. Yeah.